Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Super Science by That Chicken Dude. Chapter 33, Going Public. A few days later, a crowd of reporters were standing around a mobile stage and podium with a microphone. The stage was set in front of an entryway of NIP, as they had heard this newly constructed research facility had a grand announcement to make to the wider public. The moment this was heard by any news outlet, people from all over Japan flocked to see this one lone building in the middle of the city. Izuku and Egon stood within the building, looking out into the sea of reporters, eagerly awaiting the announcement. The both of them were in their best suits available and had practiced and rehearsed what they would say and do for this very day. Egon clapped his hand on the teen's shoulder and smiled at the boy as he saw him become very nervous. Izuku took a breath and smiled back at him, showing he was ready, and so the two of them walked out of the building and to the stage where the hungry reporters began to shout questions and flash their cameras. Egon strode up to the mic and started off saying, "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press." The crowd exploded into strike of questions and flashing cameras as Egon exclaimed, Please, keep quiet." The crowd went quiet enough for him to talk, and he continued saying, "Now, I understand that you're all very excited and have many questions. We will get to that after the announcement we have for you. Now, before we begin, my name is Professor Egon Cristallo, owner and head researcher of the Neo-Icon Phoenix Research Facility, or NIP for short. I'll allow NIP's Vice President, Dr. Midoriya, to take over." Egon stood up to the side as Izuku came to the mic, arched it down towards him, and cleared his throat while starting with, Hello everyone. As the professor has told you, I am Dr. Izuku Midoriya, Vice President of the NIP and second head researcher." Yet again, the whole crowd exploded the same way it did for Egon, and Izuku had to be firm in exclaiming, "Please hold on to all questions. I know you'll ask until after we finished." Yet again, they went quiet enough for him to speak, and he continued after calming down internally. "Now then, I'm sure most of you have heard about our facilities attacked by the League of Villains no more than a week or so ago. Well, you'll be happy to know that we were able to handle that dire situation far better than we expected and have come out even stronger from before. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why we have decided to go public despite being up and running for over 4 months. Well, it's because we are trying to get ourselves set up and stable. Our original plan was to go public much earlier until the aforementioned villain attack, but I'd like to call it a blessing in disguise, since we have far more defenses and security measures than before. If ever we are attacked again, then I truly pray for whoever is dumb or brave enough to do it," he explained to the crowd. After adjusting his overly tight tie, he said, "Now, getting to why I'm sure a few of you are here, you must be wondering what exactly it is we do here, and..." He fell off as he noticed a woman in the front row holding her hand up for the duration she was there. Izuku said to her, "Lady in the front, you've had your hand up for the last 5 minutes, and I'm getting tired from looking at it, so please ask your question. Is it true that your facility does not have any form of government funding, and is it true that you've refused it when offered?" Izuku asked after putting her hand down. "Yes," he simply answered, making the crowd ask even more questions, to which Izuku shut them down. "Please hold your questions." Once they went silent again, he sighs and continues from where he was before, getting back on track I'm sure you're wondering what it is we do here. Well, we have discovered a new form of energy that can be used in a plethora of ways, but the main application is for it to absorb a select type of material it is constantly soaking in and then reproduce said material. This energy source has been dubbed soul energy. It is placed into a special crystal that then can become what we have dubbed a splinter. As he explained all this, he took out an empty splinter from his coat pocket and presented it to the crowd, who started to take pictures by the dozen. He put the splinter away and explained, "From here we have used several methods to turn the blank energy source into something already existing or a mix and match. Soul energy can even be used by itself and causes a wide range of effects. And if you don't believe me, then how about I show you all of one of our most successful and accidental experiments." At this point, Egon had vanished from sight to bring out their main attraction. A few seconds later, the glass entryway opened up like huge doors as a huge hairy animal stomped through before the awestruck crowd. Noticing the ever-growing shadow behind him, he introduced, "Ladies and gentlemen of the press, meet Gammoth." Gammoth, with Egon on her back, stood on her back legs, trumpeted loudly in an effort to show off to the crowd. They asked no questions but began to shoot as many pictures as possible of the previously extinct animal. As they all awed before the huge creature, Izuku shyly added, "Now, with everything said, we will now be taking questions." Just as he planned, the majority of the crowd was solely focused on the mammoth, and so only a select few people asked questions. The first one was an ordinary man who asked, "How did you do this? The elephant, I mean." "Trade secret," Izuku answered. The next was a woman with a bird face who asked, "Was UA shown the wonders you created?" They were and were given waivers not to say anything until it has gone public, so you'll see them bragging a line about Gammoth and what she did during the attack. Izuku explained. After that, there was another woman who was colored gold and inquired, "What are your intentions with such vastly and seemingly limitless technology? Aren't you afraid villains and other groups will try to get their hands on it?" "That's why we've been preparing before going public. As for our intentions, it's all for the good of mankind and the pursuit of knowledge," Izuku told her. "What are your quirks?" a man with a bird nest on his head asked. Hearing this, Egon slid down Gammoth as she ate off some of the decorative plants, and, taking the mic, he answered firmly, "That is not necessary information. Next question." Izuku stopped, but Izuku stopped him, grabbing at his sleeves and telling him in a low tone, "Egon, it's okay." Egon saw his assured smile, so he backed off and let Izuku speak, telling the person, "Professor Egon's quirk is used in the production of splinters. My quirk is more silent, unseen, and not very useful. If anything, my intelligence is my quirk." The next person to ask was a strange man in a hoodie that covered his face as he shoved his hands in his pockets. "Why is someone like you in a position like this?" he asked in a vague yet sinister tone. Not realizing how he was spoken to, Izuku informed him, "I realize I'm very young for being a vice president, let alone a doctor, but I can assure you that No, not that." The man cut him off. Confused, Izuku inquired, "I'm sorry, then what do you mean?" "How can someone quirkless get such a position?" he called out in a loud tone, causing nearly the whole crowd of reporters to stop taking pictures of the mammoth and look between him and Izuku, who now had his mouth dropped open in shock. Taking a dry gulp, he tried to ask back, "Wait, how did you—" but the man angrily cut him off and proclaimed while inching his way up the stage to the podium, "You're nothing. You and the rest of your kind are nothing. You should have gone extinct long ago. This world belongs to us." Egon pulled Izuku behind him, took the mic, and yelled at him threateningly, "Okay, mister, that's quite enough. I don't know who you think you are, but you're done. Guards!" Egon tried to have him removed, suddenly pulled a gun from his hoodie, pointing it at Izuku, who was peeking out from behind Egon, and shouted, "Quirks forever, you scum!" The crowd screamed and began to panic. Egon covered Izuku in his body and waited for the gun to go off, but never did, as he heard the man suddenly scream. The two scientists looked back over to where the man was and saw him dangling by his leg, high above the ground in the trunk of a very angry mammoth. The man tried to fire his gun at the animal, but she has enough experience with firearms to know what would happen, so she slammed him on the ground twice, causing him to lose his weapon. Feeling relief and calming down, Egon vexed him, saying, "Did you seriously forget about the mammoth not even 10 feet away from us? On second thought, don't answer that." Egon then slammed the man down again before throwing him at one of the newly planted willow trees. What he didn't know was that these were the new snatching willows, and quickly found himself wrapped up in many long leafy branches, all tied up and ready to be taken by law enforcement. Chapter 34. A New Home. "Okay, drop the package," Izuku spoke over the radio as he, Egon, and Hollyhock oversaw the dropping of the tweaked reset bomb, now called the Island Bloom, on a boat in the ocean. Egon and Hollyhock watched as the boy stood unsteadily on the ship, despite it not rocking at all, and rubbing a newly formed dark rings under his eyes as he yawned. The two adults looked at one another, and Hollyhock motioned with her eyes. He nods and walks over to the boy. He jumps when the man places a hand on his shoulder and turns around with his eyes full of adrenaline like a surprised animal. "Izuku, are you sure you're alright?" Egon asked in concern. Izuku brushes off his hand, waves him off, and replies nonchalantly, "Don't worry, Egon. We've taken every precaution possible. We're thousands of nautical miles from any sort of continent, and hundreds and thousands from any human-inhabited island. Sure, the reset bomb is much bigger than the last, but we're over 100 nautical miles from it, and pointed in the opposite direction, so if it does get bigger than anticipated, we can easily move out of the way. We're literally in the middle of the Pacific Ocean." "That's not what he's referring to, Sugar, and you know it," Hollyhock interjected with a firm tone. Egon breathed and tells him, "Izuku, you nearly got killed by some quirk supremacist. Your mother was crying while holding you for hours as police and heroes investigated the whole thing. It was such a big scandal that every news station is covering it. Not very well, I might add." Hollyhock rolls her eyes at remembering how a few news outlets reported on it. "Aren't you in any way affected by it? What are your feelings on it?" Egon adds, looking at him with worry and fear. Izuku looks at the side of the boat, his gaze distant, as he replies, unconvincingly, "I feel fine, just fine. Better to get back in the saddle than let the horse run off on you." "You didn't have an equestrian accident, you almost died," Egon exploded, making Izuku jump and look like a frightened rabbit. Egon calms down, breathes deep, and tells him, "Izuku, I'm just worried about you. Most people would freak out or try to hide away after such an event, but not you. Izuku thinks it over, shrugs, laughs, and tells them, I guess I'm just built differently. I gotta keep an eye on these readings 1 minute before sea bottom impact. Egon and Hollyhock walked out of earshot, and as Izuku had his eyes glued to the tracking screen. Once on the other end of the ship, Hollyhock stressed to him, Egon, I'm worried about him. Egon nods while putting his hand on his cheek, saying in a stressed tone, Me too, Pam. That kid went through a whole lot before I found him. I thought that by redirecting his interests and energy, I would be able to help him, but I'm not sure if that's helped completely. Hollyhock sighs as she looks over at him and says, We'll have to keep an eye on him. I think that villain attack might have changed something in him. Egon nods and replies, I think so too. Professor? Izuku suddenly calls, making Egon walk over to him. The island bloom has reached the seafloor and is quickly expanding up and out. That's great to hear. That means it's where Egon tried to say congratulations before he was cut off. I said it was expanding out, Izuku stated with more firmness and exaggeration. Egon raised an eyebrow and said back, I heard you the first time, Izuku. Expanding out and fast, we gotta go, he yells at the man while grabbing him by the collar. Surprised and then aback by his sudden and rough actions, Egon pulls him off and assures him, saying, Go? Izuku, we're over 100 nautical miles from a drop point, so we should be perfectly safe. The island should be no bigger than 75 to 89 miles wide, all long. But before he could continue, something forced him to look off the boat before his eyes saw an ever-growing and ever-expanding landmass coming towards them. Egon panics and yells, Holy shit! Punch it, Captain! Punch it! The captain sees what he's yelling about, panics himself, and kicks the boat up into the fastest gear possible. The boat rocked hard, and the scientists on board had to hold on for dear life to keep from being thrown off. The boat pushed through the waves as fast as he could, but with its size, that was easier said than done. So eventually, the rapidly growing island caught up and swallowed them. The boat, forced to make landfall, crashed into the forming land, causing everyone to black out. After some time, Izuku wakes up from his blackout section and sits up from the cold deck of the boat to rub his throbbing head. He looked around, seeing dark, and assumed he was dreaming, still blacked out, or his vision hadn't returned yet. Oh God, my head, what happened last night? He asked himself before remembering what happened and shooting his eyes open to look around. From there, he tried to find his friends, but can't, so he calls out to them in a panic. Egon, Hollyhock, Captain, where are you? He yells with an increased volume on each name, becoming more and more terrified. Right here, Egon's voice calls out as he pulls himself out from one of the cabins. Man, that was a ride, Hollyhock complained as she pulled herself out from some boxes. Once Egon pulls himself out and out of the cabin, he helps the other two. From there, he cracks his back and tries to look over the boat to see where they were, but didn't see anything, just black darkness. Had they been unconscious until the middle of the night? Then his nose picks up two things, dirt and pollen. He looks up, sees a bit of light peeking out from something covering them. Then he realizes that they aren't at sea, but underneath the canopy of a thick forest. Eventually, the other two realize this and looked out with him as he stares in wonder. Whoa, is all Egon can say. I think it was far bigger than 89 miles, Professor, Hollyhock says in a snarky tone. Egon raises a finger to her and says firmly, "Don't even start, Pam." "My boat, you brainiacs owe me," the captain, who burst out from the control deck, yells at them. Realizing what the experiment did, Egon assured him, "Don't worry, we can easily compensate you." "So, does that mean we can transport Torchwick?" Egon looks around at the new environment, seeing it grow in several smaller parts, and tells him, "I'd say we should wait for this place to ripen a bit before doing anything. For now, let's try to get back to the mainland." Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the second set of chapters that I'm bulk recording, which is going good so far. Have a cup of tea next to me. Anyway, when I was reading through this, since I'm Australian and I use kilometers, the only right unit of distance. Seriously, what's a mile? Anyway, I just looked up how much is 1,000 nautical miles in kilometers. It's nearly 2,000 kilometers. Where are they? I know they're meant to be in the middle of the sea, but that's so far away. How long did it take them to get out? I mean, to be fair, they were originally planning for 89, what do you call it again? They were originally planning for 89 miles across, which is 150 kilometers across the island, but it seems like they went to all the way to 180, which is 40 kilometers is a lot, but for the size of island they're using, that's too small of a margin of error. I feel like they should be way further back. Plus, what about the waters that came from the island growing? Wouldn't there be a tsunami? Anyways, I'm rambling on. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very lovely, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!